When I was just a boy, my favorite sound in the whole world was the train whistle in the distance. Every evening around the same time, that old train passed right by my window. I'd stop whatever I was doing, press my face against the glass, and watch the lights roll by like moving stars. The rhythm of those wheels, the soft glow, and the smoke rising into the night felt like magic. It wasn't just a train, it was the sound of life itself. The old tracks ran behind our house, close enough that I could wave at passengers. Some waved back, others just stared ahead, lost in thought. I often wondered where they were going. Big cities, new jobs, maybe to see someone they missed. For me, that train was more than steel and smoke. It was a reminder that the world was wide, full of stories and faces I had yet to meet. And even though I never climbed aboard back then, in my heart, I traveled with them.
The smell of coal filled the evening air whenever the train rumbled past. Some folks complained, saying it made the laundry dirty or the garden dusty. But to me, that smell meant adventure. I'd breathe it in, close my eyes, and imagine myself in a different town. Maybe sitting in a diner far away, drinking hot coffee, listening to strangers talk about their lives. That train was a doorway to dreams, even if I never stepped through it.
My mother often found me by the window long after the train was gone. She'd smile softly, maybe shake her head, and remind me to finish my homework. But she never pulled me away too quickly. I think she understood that something about that train lit up my spirit. My father, on the other hand, just called me daydreamer. He said the world was tough and didn't have time for boys with their heads in the clouds. Still, I couldn't help it. One night, a heavy storm rolled in. The sky cracked with thunder, rain hammered the roof, and I thought surely the train would not come. But right on time, through the sheets of rain, I saw its light cutting through the darkness. It looked braver than any man I'd ever known. The wheels clattered louder than the storm itself, as if to say, "Nothing can stop me." That moment stayed in my heart forever. Proof that some things always keep moving. Sometimes my friends would ask why I cared so much about the train. They preferred baseball games or fishing down by the creek. I joined them now and then, but deep down, the tracks called me more. I couldn't explain it then, but the train made me feel small, in a good way, like I was part of something bigger. While others chased fun nearby, I chased distant lights and echoes of wheels carrying stories I would never fully know. One afternoon, I decided to follow the tracks. I walked for miles, hearing the crunch of gravel under my shoes until the sun dipped low. I didn't see the train that day, but I saw the towns it connected. Old houses, empty barns, kids waving as I passed. I felt like an explorer mapping out new land. Though I didn't ride the train, just walking where it had been made me feel like I belonged to its journey. My legs ached, but my heart soared. As I grew older, I began to notice the people working on the trains. Greasy overalls, strong hands, and faces darkened by coal dust. They were not dreamers like me. They were workers, the ones who kept the world moving. I admired them deeply. To me, they seemed like heroes, silent, strong, and steady. Sometimes one of them would tip his hat as the train rolled by, and it felt like a blessing. I wanted to thank them, but I never knew how. One Christmas Eve, the train sounded louder than ever. Snow covered the tracks, and the world felt hushed, but not that train. Its whistle cut through the night, sharp yet comforting. I watched from my window, warm under a blanket, wondering where those passengers were headed. Home, perhaps, to see family.
The thought filled me with warmth. That night, I realized the train wasn't just part of my life, it was part of everyone's, connecting hearts across the distance.
Years later, when I left home for the first time, I didn't take a car or bus. I took the train. My heart raced as I stepped aboard, finally crossing into the world I'd only watched from the window. The seats smelled of leather and dust, and the sound of wheels under me was familiar yet new. I pressed my forehead to the glass, just as I did as a boy. This time, though, I wasn't dreaming. I was truly on the journey at last. That first trip was short, only a few towns over, but it felt like I had traveled across the earth. Every stop brought new faces, new accents, new laughter. A woman with a baby, a soldier heading home, a salesman with a briefcase full of secrets. Each one had a story, and I imagined them all. I didn't speak much, just listened. The train taught me that the world wasn't only about me. It was about everyone moving together, each on their own track.
I never became a man of wealth or fame, but I carried those train rides with me all my life. Later, when work and bills weighed heavy, I would close my eyes and remember that whistle. It reminded me that no matter how stuck I felt, something was always moving forward. The train gave me hope when nothing else did. Even when my pockets were empty, the sound of a distant whistle filled me with a kind of quiet strength. There was one ride I'll never forget. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. I sat beside an old man with a cane, his hands trembling slightly. He turned to me and said, "Son, never let the world rush you. Sit by the window. Watch the journey." His words sank deep. I realized the train wasn't about how fast you reached the end. It was about how much you noticed along the way. That one sentence shaped my whole outlook.
Decades passed and trains changed. The smoke was gone, the whistles quieter, the rides smoother. Some said it was progress, but I missed the rough edges. The soot on my clothes, the shaking car, the clatter of wheels, it all felt alive. Now everything was polished, silent, almost sterile. Still, when I closed my eyes, I could hear the old rhythm. The world modernized, but my heart stayed tied to the rickety charm of the trains I grew up with. Eventually, I built a family of my own. My kids didn't care much for trains at first. They had television, radios, and later, new distractions I never knew. But sometimes, on quiet evenings, I'd take them to the tracks. We'd stand there together, the whistle echoing in the night, and I'd see the same spark in their eyes that I once had. Even if they never admitted it, I think they felt the magic too. Maybe not the same way, but close. One day, I brought my grandson to the station. He tugged my hand, impatient, asking when the train would come. "Patience," I told him, just like the old man once told me. When the train finally roared past, his eyes went wide, mouth open in awe. At that moment, I knew the spirit of the tracks would live on, not in smoke or steel, but in stories passed down, in the wonder reflected in the eyes of a child standing by the rails. Now that I am older, the trains are quieter in my town. Some tracks are gone, grass growing between rusted rails. But in my mind, they run as strong as ever. Every whistle I once heard still echoes in my memory. At night, when the world falls silent, I sometimes dream I'm back at that window, forehead pressed to the glass, watching lights pass by. In those dreams, I am young again, and the train is forever on time. Life has a way of moving like a train, steady and unstoppable. We may pause at stations, meet strangers, say goodbyes, but the wheels never stop turning. Looking back, I see my whole life as one long ride. Some parts smooth, others bumpy, but always moving forward. And just like that train in the storm, I've learned that even through darkness, even through noise, something inside us keeps pushing ahead. That's the gift the train gave me, momentum. Sometimes I wonder what became of the passengers I waved to as a boy. Did they find what they were seeking? Did they carry memories of a child waving from a window in a small town? I like to think so. Maybe someone remembers me as part of their story, just as I remember them. That's the thing about trains. They connect lives in fleeting, beautiful ways. Even if we never meet again, for one brief moment, our journeys overlapped. And so, whenever I hear a whistle in the distance, even now, my heart stirs. It takes me back to the boy I was, the man I became, and the old soul I am today. The train is not just a machine. It is memory. It is hope. It is the sound of life itself, moving forward. I may not ride it anymore, but in my heart, I never stepped off. The tracks run through me, carrying stories that will live far beyond my own years. Over the years, I began telling my children bedtime stories about the trains. They weren't fairy tales, just memories dressed in soft words. My kids loved them, maybe because they saw my eyes glow when I spoke. Sometimes I'd hear them imitate the whistle with their little voices. It wasn't about the train itself anymore. It was about family, about keeping alive the rhythm of something that once shaped me. Memories became a kind of inheritance. One evening, while visiting a small town, I discovered an old train museum. Dusty lanterns, heavy wheels, faded tickets, all frozen in time. As I walked those halls, I felt like I was walking through my own past. Every item whispered a piece of history, not just mine, but of countless travelers before me. I ran my hand over cold metal and thought, these are not relics, these are voices. And I listened to them, quietly, with the respect of an old friend. I still remember the first time my wife rode a train with me. She was nervous, clutching her purse tight, but I told her to relax. It's not just a ride, I said. It's a memory in the making. She laughed at me then, thought I was being dramatic, but when the whistle blew, she leaned against me and whispered, I see what you mean. From that day on, she understood why trains meant so much. It became a love we shared. We took many rides together after that, sometimes short, sometimes long, but always side by side. Once we crossed through mountains, tunnels echoing with the roar of steel. Another time through fields so wide it felt like the earth had no end. Each trip was a chapter of our life together, written not in ink, but in rails and wheels. Looking back now, those train rides with her remain some of the sweetest pages in my book of memories. When my children grew older, I wanted them to see the world beyond our small town, so I saved what little money I had and bought tickets for us all. We didn't go far, but far enough to see new skies, new smiles, new streets. I told them, the train doesn't just take you places, it teaches you to look. They didn't fully understand then, but I believe the lesson stayed. Even now, they travel with open eyes, carrying that spark forward. Time passed, as it always does, and one by one my children built their own lives. The house grew quieter, the tracks behind it less busy. Some nights I sat alone by the window, staring into the dark, listening for a whistle that never came. But in the silence, I still felt it. The memory of those sounds lived inside me. It wasn't about hearing the train anymore. It was about remembering how it once made me feel alive, connected, awake. I often say that a man can measure his life by the journeys he takes, some by road, some by sea, and for me, by rail. Each station was like a milestone: childhood, love, work, fatherhood, old age. Some stops were joyful, others painful, but the train always moved on. That's what life is, isn't it? A journey with no way back, only forward. And the trick is to learn not to fear the next stop, but to savor the ride until then.
Once, a young man sat beside me on a train. He looked restless, tapping his foot, checking his watch. I asked him where he was headed, and he said, "Anywhere but here." I smiled because I knew that feeling well. I told him, "Son, the place isn't what matters. It's the ride. Don't miss the view." He didn't answer, but after a while, he put away his watch. I like to think my words reached him, even just a little. In my later years, I noticed how quickly life moves, faster than the fastest train. One moment you're waving from a window, the next you're the old man telling stories. But I don't see that as sadness. I see it as beauty. Each season of life has its own ride, its own rhythm. I've learned to treasure them all. Even the hard times taught me something. That's what trains whisper to us. Keep moving. Keep learning. Keep noticing the world.
Sometimes I imagine what it will be like when my own train reaches its final station. I don't fear it. I picture myself stepping off with a smile, knowing I paid attention to the journey. Maybe I'll be greeted by familiar faces, long gone but waiting for me. Or maybe it'll just be quiet, peaceful. Either way, I know the tracks don't truly end. They just lead to another horizon, one I cannot yet see but trust is waiting ahead.
My grandchildren often ask me, "Grandpa, why do you love trains so much?" I tell them it's because trains are honest. They don't pretend to be more than they are. They move forward, no matter what. They carry people, memories, even goodbyes. And in their rhythm, I hear life itself. They usually giggle, not fully understanding, but one day, when they're older, they'll hear a whistle in the distance and remember me. That thought warms my heart deeply. The funny thing is, I never worked on trains, never built them, never drove them. I was just a boy who listened, a man who rode, a soul who noticed. Yet they became part of my identity. That shows you how powerful simple things can be. A whistle, a ride, a window view. They can shape a lifetime. You don't need to own something for it to belong to you. Sometimes it's enough just to love it and let it live inside you. As the years slow me down, I still sit by the window, though the view has changed. The tracks behind my house are long gone, replaced by grass and silence. But in my mind, I still hear the clatter of wheels, the low hum of motion. I see lights flashing by, faces I never met, stories I'll never know. And I realize that even when the tracks vanish, the journey doesn't. It lives on, carried inside me, like an eternal echo. People often chase big moments, grand adventures. But I've found that life hides its beauty in the small things. For me, it was the train outside my window. Something ordinary, yet extraordinary when you looked closer. That's what I want others to understand. You don't need riches or fame to feel wonder. Sometimes all it takes is noticing the world passing by and letting it move you. The train taught me that lesson, and I carry it always.
I once told my daughter that happiness is like a train ride. You don't control the track, but you can choose how you sit during the ride. You can stare at the floor, or you can watch the horizon roll by. She smiled at me. And years later, she repeated that same line to her children. That's when I knew the train had given me more than memories. It had given me wisdom to share. And wisdom, once shared, never truly dies. Looking back, I sometimes wonder, if there had been no tracks behind my house, would my life have been different? Maybe. But I like to think we all find our own train. For me, it was literal. For others, maybe it's music, books, or even the sea. Something that carries them, teaches them, connects them. We all need that. Life is too vast to face alone. We need a rhythm, a sound, a journey that reminds us we're not standing still. Not long ago, I took a final ride, just for old time's sake. The cars were newer, quieter, but as I sat by the window, I felt the same as I did as a boy. The landscape blurred, people chatted softly, and my heart settled into that familiar rhythm. It was as if time folded in on itself, bringing every memory together in one moment. I smiled, knowing the train had been my companion all along. From first whistle to last, it never left me. That final ride reminded me of one truth. The world changes, but the feeling of a journey never does. Whether it's by train, plane, or even just a walk down a dusty road, we are all travelers. The tracks may differ, but the heartbeat of movement, of going somewhere, is the same. That's why I tell my stories. Not to talk about trains alone, but to remind others that life is always moving, and that we must notice while we can. So here I sit, telling you my tale. Maybe you've never loved trains. Maybe your window showed something else. But if my story reaches you, even a little, then it was worth sharing. Because at its heart, this isn't about whistles or tracks. It's about finding meaning in what surrounds you, holding on to wonder, and passing it along. My hope is that you too find your own train, whatever form it takes, and let it carry you forward. And when my story is finally over, I hope someone remembers me not for what I owned, but for how I noticed the world, for how I listened to the whistles, for how I found magic and simple things. That's my legacy, as humble as it may be. The train outside my window may be gone, but the echo remains. And if you hear a distant whistle someday, think of me and smile, because in that sound, you'll hear my heart still riding on.